The morning sun's rays came through the window like intrusive, uninvited guests. After all, no one bothered to curtain them with the curtains that were available. The intense light from the window reached the bed. The body under the blanket mumbled dissatisfiedly, hiding his head under the pillow and grumbling displeasedly. The girl was indignant about why it was so bright, and then she was surprised that morning had already come. Her whole body ached. It looked like she fell asleep drunk last night. She couldn't understand where she was. The heroine examined and did not recognize her hands. Then she felt long red hair on her shoulders, and she started screaming in horror. All this definitely started not yesterday, but long before that. About a week ago, when the heroine was reading a novel. That day she finally paid off all her student debts, and I decided to celebrate with chicken, beer, and a book. It was a story about a rich man whose body was littered with scars and cuts. Slowly withering, he destroyed himself and the world around him. Afterwards, the story moved to a time when the hero met the one and fell in love. They began an affair. Under the impression of a good book and the influence of alcohol, our heroine fell asleep. But when she woke up, she discovered that she had become Amelia Dine, a secondary character in that novel. And to make matters worse, she was a countess, the only daughter of the knight commander. The girl was pretty, and that made her happy. Such forms that one could be proud. Be that as it may, the girl soon came to terms with her current situation, and she decided to visit the bank with the other countesses to find out if she had any debts. The girl was holding in her hands a bank statement on her debt obligations. Soon she lost consciousness right in the bank office. She had just paid off her student debts, and now I owed someone again. Moreover, the current figures were more significant. She understood that she would have to work tirelessly all her life. Amelia decided that it was better not to think about such things when she was sober. But she also knew that alcohol was her problem. Sitting in bed under the covers, the girl thought that alcohol was the product of the devil. Her head hurt and her body ached. She wondered if drinking had brought her here too. Then our heroine wondered who she slept with. She had no memories of this. On the nearest chair she saw men's clothing. Having examined it more closely, she was surprised. Embroidered on the sleeve of her blue jacket was the crest of the Duke of Child's family from the book she had recently read, a sign of ruin and consequence. The girl knew from the book she read that in that family there was only one person who carried this banner, Killian Child. A man with a toned torso had a towel wrapped below his waist. He dried his wet hair. It was clear that he had just taken a refreshing shower. When he appeared, the girl was very surprised. He greeted her, calling her sister. The man's face shone with positivity in every eye. The words sister sounded in the girl's head, and she was very pleased. She closed her eyes with pleasure, but then she pulled herself together. The man asked if she was okay. He felt her skin and looked into her eyes, and the girl couldn't believe that they were so nice to her. In the book, he was not as attentive and caring. Drops of water dripped from his hair. He held the girl by the cheek and looked into her eyes and smiled. The girl found the strength to break away from him and, covering herself with a blanket, muttered something in response to him. Our heroine decided for herself that she needed to put everything in its place. It turned out that she became Amelia Dine, and the man was Killian Child. He was the youngest of 4 sons who went to any lengths to survive. A monster who continued to live although he dreamed of death. According to the book, the hero went crazy at the end because the people were jealous of him and wanted his money. That's why he started the war, during which many people died and entire countries disappeared. Therefore, it could not have happened that a simple heroine with a lot of debts began to communicate with him. She admitted to the man that she didn't remember what happened yesterday, but it seemed like it was fun. The girl noticed that since morning had already come, she did not want to waste her time and would hurry back to her place. The man closed the door with his hand. He didn't want to let the girl go so quickly. He said that last night she was the first to say that she liked him. The girl did not remember what she said, and the man continued that he then responded to her with mutual recognition, and that she then said that she liked what he did, especially his rudeness. The girl screamed at him to stop, that she already understood everything. She ordered him not to say another word. The man was surprised that yesterday she was completely different. The girl apologetically explained why he continued to call her sister. He answered smiling that she herself asked. That being 23 years old was just wonderful. Our heroine told herself that it was time to quit drinking alcohol. Or you can die like that. That she is now at a wonderful young age. She remembered from the book that when the hero was 25, he started a war and destroyed the world. And before his next birthday, he met his savior and main character. It turned out that there were 2 years left for the full outcome of that story. The girl asked to forgive her for her rudeness. She reminded them that they met for the first time yesterday, so she preferred to leave. The man asked if she was sure about this, that she met for the first time only yesterday. He did not share such confidence. The girl was surprised. Killian consoled her. He answered that she herself did not remember what happened. The heroine apologized, making excuses that she probably drank too much yesterday. The partner said that this circumstance puts her in a difficult position, that she wants to leave because she doesn't remember anything about last night. His feet were shod and the girl stood next to him barefoot. The man gently grabbed his partner's face and turned it towards him to look into her eyes. He seriously told her that he had remembered every detail since yesterday. Our heroine realized that they wouldn't just let her go. I was afraid of revenge, but I didn't want to be at the epicenter of destruction. She apologized, and she said that she had something to confess. She was sure that the man would quickly come to his senses after hearing what he heard. She deliberately told him that she was with him only for the money. The heroine was afraid that she had gone too far, that she pushed him into a dark future even though she tried to avoid it. And she really hoped that he wouldn't kill her. The man pretended that he didn't care about the girl's motivation. She was extremely surprised. He asked that this was not a reason to run away from him. The girl clarified that she knew that he was the Duke of Child. That's why she buttered up. He still didn't understand what she was getting at. The redhead was screaming that his family is the richest in the world, and she emphasized that she only liked him because of the money. The man smiled contentedly. He said it was nice. After all, he had a lot of money, and it turned out that the girl liked him very much. The girl asked him to wait. She suggested that we change clothes first and then talk. She thought that his body was beautiful but too attractive, and it was somehow awkward for her to stand in her underwear. She couldn't find her clothes. The man was pleased with her embarrassment. He said it was in the wash. He suggested wearing a blue silk robe for now. Amelia thought as soon as he had time to prepare her clothes. She said that she would return as soon as she changed clothes. In the end, she had to put on that robe. She was uncomfortable and a little shy. Her feeling of awkwardness only intensified. She thought that now she would definitely not be able to escape without clothes. Killian, already dressed in a chic shirt, walked through the door. He gently touched the girl's cheek with his cheek, and he quietly told her in her ear that the blue robe suited her very well. She pushed him away with her hand, returning the conversation to the previous topic. She reminded him that she met him because of money. Doesn't he find this humiliating? The man continued to laugh at her. He said that since she liked money so much, he would need to earn more money like that. He hovered over the girl, leaning on the bed with his hands. He said that she can't imagine how sexy she looks now. Killian knocked the girl onto the bed. He asked what she liked about him, besides the money. That based on the events of last night, she also liked his appearance, and he began to unbutton the buttons on his shirt. Amelia thought that there was no need for him to take off his clothes, since he had just dressed. She couldn't remember what happened yesterday. She told herself that she must definitely remember. She egged herself on, but nothing came to her mind. She remembered how a man in a hat and coat came through the door. He politely asked her permission to sit next to him. She then noticed to herself that he was handsome. Here she did not understand why the Duke came to a provincial bar and even without security. She tried to remember what happened in the novel. On that day, Killian visited the bar for the first time. It was on this day that he threw himself off the cliff, as his pain was unbearable, and it was the anniversary of the death of his brothers. It turned out that she met him in that bar, and he planned to die after drinking. He told her, kissing her ear, that she brought him here herself, and now she must be held accountable for what she did. The girl laughed. She asked how she could bring him here. He confirmed that she asked passers-by where the nearest hotel was. Amelia covered her face with her hands in shame. It was kind of crazy. It turned out that she had seduced the one she should have avoided, and it was wonderful that she prevented disaster. But in her place, there should have been another heroine of the novel, and it turned out that she stole the main female role of this novel. The man kissed her and she covered her face in horror. The girl asked what happened after they got here. Now the man was covering his face with his hands. She pulled his hands away from his face. He said that he felt happy, and then they spent the night together, and then they started with kisses. The man decided to show how they kissed then. He liked this idea, and with his hands he quickly began to untie the belt of her robe. Suddenly the girl pulled his face away from hers, resting herself with outstretched arms. The man rubbed his forehead, and I thought that perhaps it would be enough to push him away like that. He asked why she didn't like this. The girl replied that the matter was different, and the same should be done with the one you love. She thought it wasn't that she didn't like it. She couldn't get involved with the main character who wanted to destroy everything. Killian asked what she meant. She thought she had said something wrong, that he was outraged by this treatment of a member of the child family. The man happily asked that maybe this was an intricate way to confess his love to him. He was beaming with delight. The man began to daydream, and the girl was outraged. He recalled her words that he only does this to those he loves. And looking back at the events of last night, we can draw the appropriate conclusion. The girl contradicted him. She assured the man that he had misunderstood her words. And I thought to myself that because of this man, the whole world should collapse. Killian sighed sadly in response, and Amelia thought that she would definitely start to fall in love. He looked at her with sad eyes, and then he started kissing her lips uncontrollably. She thought it wasn't worth doing, and it had to stop. The man got turned on and in return aroused his partner. He asked if he could continue further. He said that he wanted to hear her consent. I wanted to hear that his sister also wants the same thing as him. The girl thought to herself that hearing him call her little sister was a good reason to agree to go straight to hell with him. But she tried to sober herself up and stop. After all, another main character was soon to appear, Vanessa Mabranda. And if this continues, she will end up becoming his heartbroken ex. Amelia, smiling, told Killian that she really thought that, but they were interrupted by a man bursting into the room. The partner covered the girl with himself, instinctively protecting her. The hotel employee was unhappy. He said that the wrong kids went today. I asked what they were doing, and he reminded that it was time for eviction. Killian was angry. He covered the girl's shoulders with the blanket, and she yelled that he needed to be taught to knock. The man hugged the furious girl to him. She calmed down a little. He glared angrily at the boor who had burst into them without warning. Another man entered the room. Killian asked where he had been. He apologized to the gentleman for what he had not noticed. It was Hayden. He promised to deal with that bastard. His face did not bode well. The hotel employee apologized and asked to wait. He made excuses that he could not know who was renting his room. Killian hugged the girl from behind. I asked if she was okay. She asked to clarify what he meant by, "We'll sort it out." The man asked her not to worry about such trifles. He said that he only wanted the person who saw her almost naked to die. The girl knew that Killian didn't particularly care about human lives, but she thought that killing for such a trifle was too much. She asked to let that idiot go alive and well. At the same time, she made a cute face and made eyes at him. She said that he did not deserve to die. Killian frowned. He asked why she was shielding that pretzel. The man was clearly angry, or maybe jealous. Amelia noticed that the interlocutor emanated a murderous aura, and she hoped that he wouldn't kill her. She answered that she was only curious whether he would change his mind after her request. Killian asked him to forgive him for not understanding her right away. The girl continued to flirt with him. She said that he would still refuse her request. She continued that she had already begun to think about how to reward him if he agreed, and she looked from under the hair in her eyes to see how he reacted to her request. The man thought for a moment, and then he hugged her tightly and asked her to clarify what she meant by reward. Amelia looked at him with her green eyes so naively, and she asked what he would like, and I thought that he would probably ask me to finish what I started a couple of minutes ago. Killian answered quite seriously that he wanted it just like before, but the girl didn't understand him at all. He asked him to call him what she just did. The girl tensed, remembering what she called him, and then it dawned on her. Kyle. The man asked her to call him that way from now on. This was a very unexpected and no less sweet request. The girl promised that she would do so. The man rejoiced uncontrollably. Amelia asked what it would be like a nickname. The man was surprised. The girl thought to herself that no matter how nice he was now, she won't be able to call him that way in the future. She was going to stop their communication as soon as possible. The servant said that he had prepared snacks for them. There was wine, meat, and bread on the table. Killian suggested that the dumbfounded girl try it. She was simply delighted. The man, understanding her pause in his own way, offered to eat later if she had other plans. Amelia, realizing what he was getting at, hastened to answer that now was the time to refresh herself, and she began unceremoniously gobbling up snacks, stuffing them into both cheeks. But after chewing the first bite, she made a surprised face. The food turned out to be very tasty. She admitted to herself that she had never tasted such exquisite cuisine in her life. The girl realized that she was a little carried away, and the man was decorously sipping tea. He noticed that even when she was eating, she looked like she was on the cover of a hotel advertisement. As the servant entered, he spoke to the master, that this may not be enough, but these are the best clothes that he managed to prepare in such a short time. Killian suggested that the girl change clothes after eating. Amelia looked stunning in a red dress. She rejoiced at the appropriate clothes. She said "Mr." to the man, but the man interrupted her. He asked to be called by his name. The girl remembered that she promised to call him Kyle. "I noticed that he is dressed differently today than he was yesterday." He asked to clarify that she liked his image from yesterday more. But the girl was making fun. "What if we talk about her preferences? Then she prefers to see him naked." She then scolded herself for what she said. That she probably hasn't sobered up yet. The man said that yesterday was the anniversary of his brother's deaths. That's why he was dressed differently than usual. Amelia knew this but remained silent. She understood that that day was full of sorrow. She was sure that her actions affected him very differently than they would have met on any other day. He asked if she was tired. The girl replied that she was a little tired. But then I got better, saying that she was very tired, and I would like to return home as soon as possible to rest. She complained about her health. Killian argued that this was bad, and he offered to bring her medicine. The girl stopped him with a gesture and a shout, claiming that this was not necessary. Amelia rubbed her forehead, and she said that she would feel much better at home, and I asked his opinion if they went right now. The man realized that the girl needed rest. He picked her up and carried her decisively. This scared the girl, but Killian asked her not to twitch, saying that he would carry her. She couldn't understand what was happening so suddenly. The man carried her carefully, and the girl noticed that it was so pleasant for her to be in his arms. But then I drove such thoughts away from myself. The man offered to accompany the girl to her home, and asked where she lives. A luxurious carriage with the family coat of arms on the door was waiting for them. Amelia let out a cry of surprise at the sight of the carriage. She thought it was just a hotel on wheels. Killian asked her to give her address. The heroine suddenly remembered that Killian did not know that she was the daughter of Countess Diana, and so I decided to use this to escape from him. She asked me to just go straight, that she lived very close by. The man looked out the window with incomprehension. He saw a river, a fence, and a vegetable patch. He mockingly asked that the girl lived right here in the vegetable patch. The girl laughed it off and giggled. She thought that she already remembered where everything was. After all, only a week has passed since she found herself here. She laughed and said that there was a mistake. And pointing her finger to the right, she insisted that she needed to turn there, and then left to River Road. But then the landscape in the window changed to something completely uninhabited. Killian noted out loud that there was construction going on here, and he sarcastically asked how she lived here. The girl again began to show the way. She asked to turn right, then left, but she drove into a completely impassable wilderness. Then she warned about the turn. The man sternly called the girl by no name and reminded her that this was the 5th time she was taking her to the wrong place. She had a confused face. He just asked not to tell him that she was doing this on purpose, so that he would not know her address. She knew that he would guess about her idea to lead them in circles. He said that since she didn't want to go home, that meant she wanted to go home to him. The girl did not count on this at all, and the man smiled contentedly. She asked him to immediately tell her her wishes. Otherwise, he might misunderstand her. The girl thought to herself that he understood her intentions correctly. Killian asked the coachman to take them to his estate. The girl was against it. She realized that she was very mistaken. Not only could she not escape, but she was also going to his house. She thought about jumping out as she walked, but she was afraid it would hurt. It was still better than being with Killian, until the plot of the novel leads them to a tragic end. The carriage was traveling fast. The girl recalled that her father taught her fencing, as he was the commander of the knights. Therefore, she convinced herself that if she rolled head over heels in the mud, nothing bad would happen to her. Killian told her that he lives alone. Therefore, she can stay with him as long as she wants. That he has a fairly spacious room and you can spend the night with him if you want. The girl could not understand why his face expressed so much hope. She wondered if he had fallen in love with her since he was offering to stay the night in his spacious room. After all, according to the plot of the novel, Killian avoided women until he met the main character. And it was all because of his status as a duke. The girl thought that perhaps last night had impressed him so much. She didn't remember anything, but he really seemed to like it. The duke asked Amelia if she was comfortable. She didn't immediately understand what he was getting at, but he was in no hurry to explain to her. The girl sat next to him, leaning on his shoulder. But realizing that this might be inconvenient for him, she apologized. She quickly moved away from him and put her hands away. The man forced her head onto his lap. He said everything was fine, and he invited her to lie down at her convenience. Amelia thought it was really convenient. She had never known before that lying on someone's lap could be so comfortable. The man asked her just not to fidget if she didn't want to seduce him again. He said that it was still a long way to get to the estate, and this carriage is his property. Therefore, he could do whatever he wanted here. The girl jumped up sharply in indignation. She was extremely outraged by such hints on his part. And the man smiled, pleased that his vulgar joke was a success. Their carriage drove up to a luxurious estate. Our heroine thought that there was nothing wrong with her living here for a while. The gate was already open. They were clearly waiting impatiently. There was an elegant fountain in the middle of the courtyard. The carriage passed him and approached the front entrance of the mansion. The duke got out of the carriage first to offer his hand to his guest. All the servants came out to meet the master. She was in strict uniform and bowed obligingly. The girl, looking around the size of the estate, was surprised. She was willing to bet that it would take a long time to get from the main gate to the entrance of the estate. She was hoping to escape from here at night. But now I was afraid that I might simply get lost here at night. Killian asked if she liked it here. She replied that she would not get bored in such a beautiful estate, even if she stayed here for a couple of days. The man didn't like the part about a few days. The girl modestly replied that if she stayed for a long time, she would bring inconvenience to him and his servants. Killian argued that she was wrong, and the servants unanimously asked her to stay with them as long as she wished. At the same time, they smiled at her and bowed politely. The man escorted the guest into the house. He affectionately called her little sister. The servants were delighted with the way their master called the girl and how he carefully hugged her by the shoulders. Our heroine wondered to herself, why did the character who seemed so busy in the novel turn out to be so careless? However, all the servants were waiting to report on the recent news. Amelia said that she sees that he has a lot to do, and she insisted that she should leave quickly. He asked her where she wanted to go. She replied that she thought he would be busy for a while. He said her conclusion was wrong, and he asked me to sit here for a couple of minutes and let him finish everything. Killian made a stern and serious face. He said that everyone has 30 seconds to report. When contacted by the former, he promised to consider a contract with the Mirrorfield trademark. He asked me to bring the documents to his office. Another said that they were asking for donations. He agreed and ordered to send them. A third reported that a railroad company was asking for a loan from a bank named after Child. He approved the loan. Amelia grabbed her head at how much money he had just distributed in just a second, and Killian was already next to her. I asked if she was upset about anything. He noticed how she was carefully watching him. The girl became thoughtful. She didn't even realize how much she had fallen in love with his attractiveness while he worked. The man said that he would show her his room, that she will live there for the next couple of days. The girl asked him where she would live. The Duke smilingly replied that of course in his room. After all, last night she dragged him into the room, and now it was his turn. The girl didn't even know how to answer this. She tried to say something, but Killian interrupted her, saying that there were no more rooms available. This surprised her very much because how could this be in such a mansion? They walked along the corridor, and the servants accompanied them at a short distance and admired the gentleman, who was simply glowing with happiness. The girl asked, pointing to the doors, what was wrong with these rooms? The maids replied that she could not stay in these chambers. After all, they were all already busy. They argued that it was unsafe to be alone. And the Duke continued his tour of the estate. The maids asked her to stay close to the Duke. They even offered her to stay forever. In one of the rooms, a simply grand dinner had already been served, but the girl thought that she needed to get out somehow. Afterwards, she and the Duke walked around the fountain. He asked if she liked the dishes. The girl answered in the affirmative that everything was very tasty, and she privately regretted that she would never have the chance to try this again. She finally decided for herself that this could no longer continue. She sat down on the nearest bench, and she gasped deliberately. The Duke was worried about his guest. She said, touching her forehead, that after the walk she seemed to have a fever. The girl said that she wanted to take a shower and go rest. The man had a worried look on his face. He asked the maids to take the girl to the bathroom and help her. Amelia asked with sparkling eyes, "Will he wait for her in the bedroom like an obedient boy?" After a pause, he answered briefly, "Yes," and the girl was happy to herself. Her mission was almost accomplished. While our heroine changed into a soft and comfortable robe, the maids had already prepared a bath with rose petals for her. The girl asked to prepare aromatic oils for her, the smell of which the Duke liked. The maid helpfully answered her, calling Madame Sister. Amelia was surprised by such an unusual address to her, but remembered that the Duke never called her anything else in front of the servants, so they might just have thought that that was her real name. However, this was no longer important to her. After all, she had already decided everything for herself. She told the maid that she was thirsty. She understood everything and asked her to let him bring her a refreshing drink. Our heroine sent away the two maids assigned to her, and she quickly put on the dress. Luckily, the guest bathroom was on the first floor. She decisively opened the window and stood on the windowsill with her bare feet. I looked back and for the last time sadly looked at all the luxury that remained here forever. Amelia left an envelope with a letter for Killian on the table, and she decisively jumped through the bathroom window into the garden of the ducal mansion. She said goodbye forever to the rich gentleman main character, who was doomed to death. She ran away without looking back, only her bare feet were visible. The assistant reported to the gentleman about what had happened. He asked him for forgiveness. He explained that while the maids were away, my lady ran out the window. A week has passed since then when Amelia ran away, only leaving a letter. The Duke was sad all this time and was indifferent to everything. The girl left him the following message. "Sir, I sincerely hope that you will be able to forgive me. You and I belong to different worlds, so we are not suitable for each other. I also want to apologize for the fact that my intentions were not pure. I will pray that one day you will meet your true love." The Duke was sitting in his study late at night. He reread Amelia's letter. He pondered the concept of true love. After she left him in such a cruel way, he remembered that it was the girl who then dragged him into bed. How surprised he was then by her behavior. How I tried to explain myself to a completely unfamiliar lady, but she said that he was handsome, that he can't get enough of him, and she asked me to call her sister. I asked her to call her that at least once. She had such sad and seductive eyes then. The Duke then asked Lady Dane to go to bed. That judging by how much she drank then, he doubted that she was adequate now, and he asked not to tell him that she was older. After all, she was born only a month earlier. Then the girl was surprised that the man knew about her. After all, they just met for the first time today. And he asked if she always brings men she met for the first time to the hotel. She then changed her anger to mercy. She said that she would just lie down here, and so that he would trust her. She was seductive. Her neckline, patting gesture, and alluring gaze excited sexual fantasy. The Duke thought that he was not in the habit of taking a girl for one night, and he couldn't understand why he followed her then. And she beckoned him with her green eyes. The man pondered the situation for some time, but I came to the conclusion that it still makes sense. Probably the girl didn't remember, but they already met for the first time 10 years ago. He began to kiss her lips, accepted her hugs, reciprocating. Then both simply disappeared into the madness of carnal pleasures that washed over them. 10 years ago, a class for heirs was held at the child bank under the guidance of the bank's director. A carriage with the Duke's family coat of arms, drawn by a pair of horses, was driving quickly towards the building. The boy riding in that carriage asked his father, "How long will that lesson last?" The man answered briefly that it would last about 2 hours. That noble boy was Killian Child himself at the age of 13. He was thinking about the upcoming dinner that was planned for the evening at Countess Mainz's. They arrived at the main building of the child bank. A man with red hair stood near the building. He scratched his head as he read the long list of their debt obligations. The man he vouched for ran away, and it turned out that his unpaid debts now fell on his shoulders. Amelia Dine was 14 years old at the time. The boy got out of the carriage, and his attendant carefully threw a coat with hand-embroidered lapels and cuffs over his shoulders. Killian was reserved in his emotions and cold towards caring for him. He was eager to finish that lesson as quickly as possible and start having fun in the evening. At the door of the bank, he saw a family. The man told his wife that he thoughtlessly acted as a guarantor for his comrade. The boy didn't know who they were. His mentor said that this was the family of the Earl of Dyne, that they acted as a guarantor for their friend, and they left their lands and all the property donated to them by the emperor as collateral for the loan. The woman laughed. She said through laughter that it was just money. There won't be any, and that's okay. After all, no one was hurt, and their baby Amelia is healthy. And since they are a family, they will cope with everything together. And the red-haired, green-eyed girl told her dad that her mom was right, that together they are strength. Her eyes were burning and her hands were clenched into fists. Dad looked at her, calling her dear and other gentle and affectionate words. The parents hugged their wonderful and restless daughter, feeling love for her and for each other. The guy told himself that he didn't care, that as the heir of the Child family, he was trained to ignore all sorts of trifles like feelings of envy or jealousy. When Killian was 7 years old, he came into the office and called Dad, but he recalled that he asked to call him Father, and that burning bitterness in his heart always forced him to look back at the past. These small hands with which the girl held the big hands of her mother and father together. The boy did not know what he was looking for there, in those memories. And when he was close to the girl, looked into her green eyes, and that meeting was so short that the memories of it tended to fade. He really liked her. He experienced incredible feelings when he felt the tenderness of her skin and caressed her face, and she smiled back at him. The girl appeared in his thoughts again and again, making his heart beat faster. He wanted to merge with her for the rest of his life. A few days later, an assistant came with a report that the royal family is asking for additional funding. The Duke asked how much they needed this time. The guy looked intently at the red-haired family. He recognized them almost immediately. This was the Earl of Dyne's family. He hadn't seen them for a long time. Because of the debts they had, they were now not allowed into the palace. Killian watched them from the side. The woman asked her to forgive her, and the man reproached himself that he was a bad father, that because of him the family is forced to suffer so much. But Amelia smiled at them. Her father gave her his hand, and the girl claimed that one day they would pay off all their debts. She knew that the amount there was simply huge, but step by step they must cope. After all, in her past life she was able to get out of debt once already. She was sure that she would come out now. Amelia hugged her parents. She comfortingly told them that at least they were all alive and well. This means they didn't lose anything worthwhile. The Duke sighed heavily. He had seen how the girl had grown since the last time he saw her, but only after the second meeting did he understand that the feeling he felt that day when he was a child was precisely envy. He, the only heir of the Child family, could not break through the wall to those bright feelings of warmth and comfort, even in that provincial bar, when Amelia was clearly not herself. He couldn't push her away that night when he decided to jump off the cliff and end his life that way. Even to a stranger, being in a drunken state, the girl gave so many vivid emotions, and in return he wanted to beg her to take him into her world. The man was sitting at his desk, reading a letter from Amelia. He couldn't even imagine that the girl would drag him to that hotel. But to tell the truth, he liked everything then. And that feeling was much more than a simple liked it. The Duke sat on a chair, covering his face. He understood that he was doing something unusual for him that night. That's why when he was informed a week ago about the girl's escape, he thought it was time to stop fooling around. Although Killian was aware that he missed her greatly, he let her go, knowing that now his heart was no longer under his control. She made him like this, and then she said that they were not suitable for each other. The man agreed with her argument, and it turned out that this was now their common problem. Killian realized that he could not refuse the girl, so that means he had nothing to wait for. He called his assistant. After all, since they didn't fit each other, you just need to make sure they do. The assistant came to the master, ready for his orders. Killian asked where Amelia was now. He hesitated a little. Then he said that a week ago, having run away to her home, the girl became ill. The Duke began to shout at Hayden. Why didn't he tell him this earlier? Then, changing his anger to mercy, he decided that it was his own fault for leaving her alone. He voiced his decision to go to Amelia's house tomorrow. The assistant helpfully asked what he should prepare for the gentleman for the next day. Killian asked to take care of the girl's medications and favorite things, but Gaydon did not understand the second part of the phrase about favorite things. The Duke recalled that the girl said that she loved money. Therefore, he asked to prepare gold bars and jewelry. And there was something else. He asked me to prepare a special suit for him for tomorrow, which would be easy to take off. His family's coat of arms had 2 lions, and the man knew that Child the Lion would never give up until he got what he wanted. Even in the garden of the mansion, someone could be heard coughing heavily. The girl asked herself why she ended up in the body of the Count's daughter, who had a lot of debts hanging on her. She couldn't even go to the hospital, although I felt simply disgusting. Fever, chills, suffocating cough. All the signs were alarming. Amelia lay on the pillow and thought, maybe she should have spent an emergency day on the services of a healer. But she understood that it was expensive. But then she heard a noise in the corridor of their mansion. She couldn't understand what was happening. After all, they no longer had servants. The girl sat up in bed. She simply didn't have the strength to do more. Amelia, gathering all the strength she had left, threw the blanket over her shoulders and crawled out of the room, holding onto the wall so as not to collapse on the floor. She heard her mother's plea. The girl became wary. She looked down the steps. The man on the first floor gave orders to others to thoroughly check everything everywhere. Some of them glued small pieces of paper onto the furniture. The girl noticed that there was already pasting on the fireplace, chair, and floor lamp, and this was the coat of arms of the Child family. Her mother asked what they should do now. The head of the family hugged her shoulders. The girl realized that the property was now being sealed. It was horror, a nightmare and a disaster for the family and each member separately. Amelia rushed to her parents, and the employee stood in front of a mountain of teddy bears and asked what they were. The eldest of them ordered him to seal everything he had. The girl realized that it was a piece of goods that they needed to deliver. She asked the employee to stop. He rudely replied that he was busy. She claimed that when the Child family bank gives money to the nobles, but they do not return it, this means that the property pledged as collateral for the loan is seized. The emperor himself grants the nobles their status. The employee replied that it was true, not in their case, and the girl knew that only those who have an heir who can provide for their family are exempt from payment. It was customary for nobles to retain their title even if they lost all their property. And if the family went bankrupt, the heir could still become a politician or occupy a high position. In this case, the right to exemption from payments helped him restore family honor. The girl understood that she was the heiress of the Dine family. The employee asked if Miss would go to work. His face had a rather unpleasant expression. Our heroine remembered the first time she woke up in Amelia's body. Then she saw a large number of advertisements about the work of their newspapers, as well as credit policy and guarantee from the bank. She knew that Count and Countess Dane loved her unselfishly, that even when she woke up and did not understand what was happening around her, they were with her, supported her, and surrounded her with care. The girl was not sure that even though they were poor, but she hardly dared to deal with the current situation for the sake of other people. And since she was now Amelia Dine, it was her responsibility. She resolutely announced that she would go to work to pay off her debts. The employee said that in this case she would need to bring proof of her employment within a month. The girl promised that she would do everything on time, and she asked them to leave her house immediately. The employee was furious. He believed that she was simply wasting their time. He stuck Amelia's sealing papers on the dress, and he said that he would keep an eye on her. She was scared and trembling all over, and the collectors were already leaving the whole pack of vultures from the Count's house. The girl was furious. She then called the chief employee the most disgusting names. She was infuriated that he had put a sealed property sticker on her. The head of the family was dejected. He sat with his head down. He asked his daughter to forgive him. He understood that because of his thoughtless act, she had to get into trouble. The more the girl got to know her current family, the more strange they seemed to her. After all, her father, the Count, became the youngest knight to receive the title of Grand Master. Only the best knight of the Emperor could receive such a title, and it turned out that such a great man was betrayed for his own loyalty and buried under unsustainable debt. And now, despite his title, he sewed eyes on teddy bears to continue wearing his title. Madame Dine consoled her daughter, calling her baby. I asked if she was scared. She consoled her with kind words. She came from high society and was the daughter of a count, and despite all the difficulties caused by his father, she was still as beautiful and proudly withstood everything that befell their fate. She, as a mother, invited her daughter to pray to God together. This was their biggest problem. These sweet and kind but not at all self-sufficient nobles were simply incorrigible. They prayed while water dripped from the roof, but they were not able to fix it, and their servant Peter was too short to reach. Although I understood what needed to be done and how, her family prayed even as the mice ate the last of their food. They prayed when Amelia went missing. It seemed that all they were doing was praying, even if it was already late at night. That's why she couldn't just run away and leave them alone. These people loved her very much. They will pray until they lose consciousness that their daughter will be found. But she did not wish such a fate for them. There were sticky notes from the borrower's bank on the couch and table. Amelia asked her parents to sit on the sofa. She used the chair nearby. She asked them to calculate how much money they spent on living. She offered to understand where they could save money, so that this money can be used to pay off the debt. Her mother answered that she could get sick if she didn't eat well. Therefore, she offered to earn a little money by selling jewelry. My father promised to find himself a job as soon as possible. They were happy that they had a wonderful daughter, and they were surprised when she came up with such a wonderful plan without first studying economics. The girl scratched the back of her head. She said that she had just read a lot in the newspapers before, and she thought to herself that the memories of that Amelia also helped her a little. But then the girl coughed. It was a severe suffocating attack. Her parents were seriously worried about her, but she convinced them that everything was fine. O said that she would go to her room to rest. A guest was supposed to come to her, and she asked him to let him in without any unnecessary questions or inquiries. Walking into the room, she said to herself, "Why, you shouldn't overexert yourself when you're sick." She hoped that the healer would come as soon as possible. Amelia tried to tear the sticker off her dress, but she couldn't do it, even when she tried her best. Then the girl decided to quit this overwhelming occupation, saying that it was no longer important. She simply took off her dress and threw it away, having considered that if someone wants to enter, they must first knock on the door. Our heroine simply collapsed with her whole body on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. She slept, but even in her sleep she felt very bad. It turned out that she had avoided a devastating end, but she didn't want to die from the disease at all. In her sleep she asked for water. The voice asked if she could stand up. She forced her eyes open. Her Kyle stood worried with a glass of water in his hand. He saw that the girl had woken up and asked how she was feeling. The girl's face was red from the temperature, and her hair was disheveled and wet from sweat. The man asked her to drink water first. He carefully threw his jacket over her. Out of weakness, the girl could not hold the glass and spilled water on the Duke's jacket. She asked her to forgive her for her awkwardness. He asked her to stop. Killian asked why she let him in then. He stated emphatically that she needed rest, and he forbade her to overwork herself. He threatened that he would not go anywhere until she recovered. I asked her to be more attentive to herself, and he asked if she wanted to seduce him again. The girl was embarrassed and wrapped his jacket tightly around her neckline. Amelia said she wasn't going to do anything like that, and it's just an accident. The man accepted her arguments without argument, shifting the conversation to another topic. He asked how long she had been sick. The girl hesitated and said that she had been coughing since she undressed to take a bath. She knew it would sound terrible if she said she ran away because she was sick. The Duke was surprised that she ran away then so as not to infect him. The girl beamed all over, because he fell for her trick. Killian said, already smiling, that he didn't even know about it, that he thought she just rejected him. Both were already laughing. The moment of awkwardness was smoothed over, and even the painful state of the heroine was no longer taken into account. The man carefully touched her forehead with his lips, checking to see if she had a fever. He became worried, realizing that the girl had a high temperature. I asked how bad she was now. Amelia, without hiding the truth, answered that it was very bad. It seemed to her that she would soon die completely. She reminded him that she had left a letter in which she asked him not to look for her. The Duke asked in an offended voice why she didn't like him. The girl thought to herself that his pleading look would just make her heart break. She asked her to forgive her. After all, lovers usually do this kind of thing. The man replied that he understood everything, and he began to smile contentedly. The Duke said he called a doctor for her, and he asked the girl to get dressed. He picked up Amelia's dress that was lying there from the floor, but I was very surprised to see a paper with a coat of arms pasted under a bow on the chest. He indignantly asked what this was and why it was on her dress, and he angrily squeezed her clothes in his hand. The dress was lying on the floor again. The Duke called Hayden's assistant, I asked him what was going on. He sat next to the dress and examined it. He promised that he would immediately set off to find out everything, and he asked what to do with the culprit when he found one. Killian ordered, of course, to kill him. The girl coughed to attract attention. Then the man changed his order. He said to burn the culprit. The assistant obligingly bowed to the master as a sign of acceptance of his order. A maid came through the door. She was carrying a folded stack of blue-colored clothes. Killian said that he had prepared clothes for her that should fit perfectly even when you are sick. The man asked if the girl could change clothes herself, but she replied that she might need the help of a maid. The Duke offered her his services. After all, he himself could help her. To which she replied that since the dress was a woman's, it would be better to get help from a woman. But he was joking. He answered jokingly that it was like taking off a dress, only in reverse. The man held the heroine by the shoulders through his jacket, and he argued that you shouldn't wear a dress over a wet nightgown. This was starting to irritate Amelia. She barked at him with all her might that it was enough to make his fantasies come true, and she demanded that he turn to the wall. The Duke timidly obeyed and stood turning to the wall, and the girl, quickly putting on her dress, thought that you wouldn't relax with it for a second. The Count and his wife looked into the door of their daughter's bedroom. They hesitantly informed her that the doctor had arrived, but a whole team came in wearing gowns and masks. One of them was older and wearing glasses. Apparently, he was their eldest. The gray-haired man said hello and introduced himself. He was the chief physician of Child Hospital, and his name was Paul Remian. He asked the girl for permission to examine her. She was a little confused, but agreed. She could not understand why so many people and the chief doctor himself came to treat her. The parents were surprised. They wondered how long their daughter had known Duke Child, and they understood that it took quite a long time, since he brought the best doctors on the continent to her. The girl made it clear to her family that she had no idea how this happened, and the doctor said that everything was very bad, and he shook his head in horror that she had gone to such lengths. The Count and his wife were shocked. They folded their hands in prayer and listened to the words of the famous doctor, and he claimed that their daughter would recover only if she received the best treatment and rested in the best conditions. He assured that they would not be able to provide her with such conditions. Just at that time, the girl was torn apart by a coughing fit. The Countess was going to sell her hair, and her father was already going to sell something too. They agreed to do anything to pay the necessary medical expenses, and the girl thought that everything was not so serious. The Duke is pleased with the effect produced on Amelia's parents. I asked the medical luminary where he would advise her to live while she recovered. The doctor said that the best place is Duke Child's estate. He promised that the girl would be taken care of there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will provide the best treatment in the entire empire. The doctor claimed that there were the most wonderful conditions for patients in critical condition, and the Duke nodded in agreement. The girl thought that those two were the biggest liars in the world. Mother Countess was surprised. Father Count Dine specified that if their daughter moved to the estate, she would be able to survive. But the daughter sent them a mental message so that they would not believe it, that she just had a common cold. The Duke said that everything was clear to him, and since the head doctor recommends that the girl be treated on his estate, he will happily take her away right away. He voiced that it might be inconvenient for the Count's daughter to live with a stranger. The girl did not understand his idea, although she agreed with his statement. Then the man turned to her. In his hands was a huge bouquet of dozens of red roses. He said that the only way out in such a situation for Amelia was to become his girlfriend. Our heroine even forgot for a second that Killian Child is a person capable of achieving anything he wants. And he stood in front of her with a huge bouquet of flowers, cunningly proposing to her to become his bride. But Amelia didn't understand what the point was in him inviting her to start dating. And the Duke continued that he himself understands that flowers alone are definitely not enough for her to make a decision. He threw the bouquet over his shoulder at the assistant. He snapped something and his servants began to carry oak chests into the girl's chamber. They were quite heavy, so the two strong men strained with all their strength to carry them. The servants opened the gifts they had brought, and it turned out that each of the three were filled with jewels and gold. Amelia and her parents were amazed. They wondered how much it all might cost, and the Duke, pleased with the effect produced, claimed that he could give her everything she wanted. Our heroine had paralysis, but when she controlled herself, she began to refuse to accept all this, and the jaw that dropped in surprise was replaced by anger and waving his arms. The girl understood that even if the Duke liked her now, she still couldn't get involved in the plot. Therefore, she asked not to do this, that she doesn't communicate with him because of money. Killian reminded that it was she herself who told him so, and that was a completely fair remark. He clarified that he means not only because of the money. She replied that it was not 100% because of them. The man was positive. He was glad that the girl had no reason to reject him. He now saw no problem at all in either of the two cases. Our heroine grabbed her head. She called on the gods to help her. She reproached herself for digging her own grave. Father Earl Dine warned that if it was true that it was all about money, then he was categorically against it. That she shouldn't force herself to make sacrifices because of his debts. His daughter assured him that everything was completely wrong, and the Duke begged him not to worry so much. That his daughter that night for the first time. He didn't finish, he was interrupted by a girl's exclamation. She demanded that Kyle shut up. She screamed at him that he wanted to tell her father how she dragged him to that provincial hotel. The Count was unpleasantly surprised by his daughter's unchaste behavior. Killian said that it just happened that way, and the look was ready to suffer any punishment. The head of the family decided, what if she really likes him? Then it's worth thinking carefully about this. But Amelia asked to wait, and she dragged Kyle by his tie to talk privately. His shirt quickly came unbuttoned, revealing a beautiful and inflated male torso. There were many spectators, but everyone had the same expression on their faces. The Duke said that he could understand that the girl was sick now, but even in her sick state, this is no excuse for her disgusting behavior. She understood that a foul game was being played, and that it was some kind of strange shirt, that she just unzipped him at one point. It looked like she had no buttons at all. The mother cried that her Amelia had become such an adult unnoticed, and she offered to help her pack her things. Father Count Dine congratulated his only daughter with tears in his eyes. Amelia convinced them that they had understood everything wrong. They didn't listen to her. They said that when she was ready, she would come down. They still couldn't believe that their daughter had become so big, and they warned that the house had poor sound insulation. The girl couldn't understand why she suddenly began to worry about the soundproofing of their house. The doctors, too, were in a crowd in a hurry to leave the girl's room, wishing her a good day. She was even confused. After all, they had just claimed that she was terminally ill. But the door closed behind the last of the doctors. They were left alone with Kyle. Amelia asked how this happened to his shirt. She only lightly touched her. The man stroked his curves, seducing her with his sexuality. He said that he had prepared everything in advance. The girl began to choke again with a coughing fit. Killian sat her down on the bed and asked her to calm down for being so angry, and she asked him to button his shirt. The Duke fastened the buttons and believed that the girl liked his idea of unbuttoning. He asked her to admit that she wanted to be his girlfriend, and he advised him to make a decision quickly before he changed his mind. Amelia didn't want to admit it and asked why she was suddenly following his lead. She turned away from him and made an offended face. Killian recalled what the doctor said, that she has pharyngitis and it can develop into a rhinovirus, and he falls under a number of dangerous diseases. He argued that if such a disease is not treated, it can end very badly. Before the doctors arrived, the girl believed that she had a common cold. She held her head in horror. Now she understood why she felt so unwell then. And I thought that if she died in this world, it would be the end of everything around her. The girl understood that the most important thing for her now was to recover. Therefore, I decided to be the Duke's girlfriend, and after recovery do something special so that he himself leaves her. Drool. Eat with his hands. The man presented Amelia with an armful of roses. She was surprised, and at the same time he looked outrageously pleased. The girl agreed to his proposal to date. She accepted a huge bouquet of red flowers from his hands. The Duke had a happy and carefree expression on his face. He brought his face close to her cheek, quietly and tenderly speaking words of gratitude to her. His nose almost touched her temple. The girl felt his breath and even narrowed her eye a little. And the man was already saying in her ear that, by the way, her illness is also called a cold. Amelia was not yelling at him, but he said that it was time for them to go, since the carriage had already arrived at the front entrance of the Count's mansion. Killian grabbed the girl in his arms so unexpectedly that she didn't even have time to gasp, and he resolutely carried her barefoot to the exit of her parents' house. The parents advised their daughter to obey doctor's orders and take care of herself. She shouted over her shoulder that everything was not at all as they understood. Her mother wiped away tears of happiness for her child with a handkerchief. Amelia sat in the carriage, facing away from Kyle. She thought it was some kind of curse that she had fallen into his trap again, and it seems this time everything was much more serious. The Duke turned her face towards his. He asked what she was looking out of the window like that. He offered to look only at him now, since they were now officially dating. The girl sighed. She couldn't be mad at Kyle when he made that face, but everything should have been completely different. She asked what happened to his clothes then. After all, she barely touched her then. She expressed her guess that this was done on purpose so that the shirt could be easily unbuttoned. The man didn't answer her, but it was clear from his satisfied face that she guessed everything correctly. He reminded her that he could do anything she wanted. Amelia asked him not to do that in the future. After all, there were other people there whom he also embarrassed with his unbuttoned shirt antics. She never allowed this to happen, even when they were alone. Otherwise, she is not responsible for herself. The girl had a stern look, demanding unconditional obedience. Killian was upset. He said offendedly that he didn't like the orders. But then he began to smile, and he suggested that the girl take a nap. After all, the road was long, and he advised her to lie down like last time. Amelia understood that in any case she needed to quickly force him to break up with her. She told him that he might soon regret contacting her, that she's still a piece of sticky stuff. The Duke asked the girl when she would start clinging to him. She warned that she would stick her nose everywhere where she was not asked. She promised that she would constantly pester him with questions about what he did and who he met. It looked like the girl was determined to make his life hell. The Duke thought that since she was so interested in his life, then he decided to invite her to spend the day together, and he promised to warn his employees about this. He almost jumped with delight. Killian promised to do whatever she wanted, and the girl was surprised that he somehow reacted unpredictably to her promises and threats. The Duke said that if you remember the events a week ago, then she told him to wait in the room while she took a shower, and the girl thought to herself, why would he remember this? The man began nervously drumming his fingers to some rhythm unknown to the girl. He was clearly nervous but didn't want to show it. He claimed that he had to wait too long, and now it's unlikely he'll get by with a small reward. Amelia was all tense. She didn't want to bring up such a topic with him. The girl told herself not to lose her head from the provocation. I tried to pull myself together. She convinced herself to close her eyes so as not to fall for his pleading look. And then an idea struck her. She turned away and coughed a little. Then she reminded Kyle that she ran away then so as not to infect him. Amelia argued that it would be simply terrible if he got infected and fell ill from her. Therefore, she will have to live alone for a while when they arrive at the estate. The Duke scratched his head, not knowing how to get out of it to suit him. But he decided to accept her rules of the game. He said that, of course, her well-being is the most important thing for him now. He promised to wait patiently until she got better. The girl rejoiced to herself. It was her small victory. And Killian noted to himself how cute she was when she acted like that. The Duke remembered what Hyde had told him. He asked to speak with him before the gentleman went to Miss Amelia. He said that love is like a tug of war, and he believed that he couldn't do everything alone all the time. Killian asked to clarify whether it was necessary to push her away. Hyde stated in his teaching that love is unlike anything else in this world. But you should adhere to the rule and remember that too much taste kills the taste itself. Killian thought about those words then. After all, he saw a certain meaning in them. He asked if he therefore needed to pretend to be indifferent. But the assistant said that this was not exactly what he wanted to say. The man decisively said that he would go and confess his love to the girl, as if he did not care. The Duke's mentor and assistant in one person began to lose patience. He asked him to forgive him, and he said that he wanted to clarify the meaning of push away. He gave a lecture on the topic of carrot and stick. Amelia stood under the door, holding a tray with dishes and tea. She couldn't believe Kyle could speak so loudly. If she knew that Hyde helped him and explained everything, she would be grateful to him. After all, now she can feel at home in the Child estate. She was having breakfast alone, and I thought it was worth being realistic. She was aware that this estate was the best place in the world, and I was in seventh heaven. Her bathtub was so big that you could swim in it like a pool. The blue water simply beckoned her. The gold-plated taps were always polished, and fresh rose petals in the water. The estate's greenhouse reminded her of a greenhouse. There was even a small tea table with chairs. You could always enjoy greens with a cup of tea. And her bedroom was simply huge. A soft mattress, plenty of pillows, and fresh silk linen made it possible to have a good rest. Amelia always ate delicious food. It was like she was in a 5-star hotel. Meat, sweets, fruits, exotics. There were things on her table that she had never heard of before. And Kyle didn't impose himself either. So her life was just wonderful. She enjoyed the chicken and washed it down with red wine. The girl already thought that the man had lost interest in her. She admitted that it might be because they became a couple. But if she had known about the carrot and stick lecture, she would have been very touched. Killian grabbed his head and asked his assistant if he was sure that his scheme would work. After all, when Amelia was walking in the garden and accidentally met him, she didn't even look. And then he was luxuriously dressed. But Hyde argued that his master was mistaken, that the girl now enjoys being on the estate. And that was already a good sign. The Duke was surprised by this observation. Hyde continued. He thought that the girl was quite comfortable here, and he hoped that she would open her heart to him when she became completely comfortable here. The Duke agreed to wait. After all, his assistant's assurances sounded logical. But he was afraid that she might forget about him completely. Then Hyde came up with something. He began to whisper something in his master's ear, and he listened to everything with the most serious look. Killian liked this idea. He asked to prepare everything that would be needed to bring it to life. The girl was lying on the sofa and enjoying the beauty around her. The maid brought her a letter. She said that the Duke asked to give it to Miss Amelia. It seemed strange to her that he was sending her messages, even though they lived in the same estate. The Duke asked if she liked her room. He told her not to be shy to tell her if she was too hot or cold. He allowed her to use anything on the estate at her discretion. She didn't understand whether it was worth sending her a message through the servants, that she was already happy with everything here. And after that she began to receive such notes every day. She was still in bed when the servants brought her another one. It simply wished her a good day. Another day at breakfast they brought her the following. In it, he reported that doctors do not yet see that she is recovering, and he promised to ask the chefs to create a menu for her especially carefully. And when she was in the bathroom, they brought her a message. In it he said that he was bored. He expressed the hope that she would soon feel better, and she was already getting pretty tired of it. The girl walked down the corridor in only a robe and soft slippers. She remembered that in that novel he spent huge amounts of money. But the way he was now making her believe that she could change his future. She remembered that even at school she was not particularly popular. And she was a simple middle-class girl, not a leading lady. Amelia met the Duke at the door. She was a little surprised to see him. He said he missed her. She answered him sarcastically, that he missed her so much that in 2 weeks he never visited her. The girl wanted not to answer him at all, but she didn't want to seem rude. After all, they hadn't seen him for a long time. Amelia said she was going to drink wine, and she offered to join her. She asked that he did not visit her because he was afraid of getting infected from her. At the same time, hospitably pouring wine into both glasses. The Duke was indignant. After all, how could she think that he could refuse to meet with her for fear of getting infected from her? But the girl turned it all into a joke, answering that he could look at her at least once. She really wanted to tease him a little, and Killian said that it is very difficult for him to control himself when she is around. Amelia was surprised. She asked to clarify what exactly was difficult for him to control in himself. He answered that it was difficult for him to fight his desires. The girl asked him to repeat, which she allegedly did not hear. The Duke said that he really wanted to tell her in person. The girl thought that there was no point in making fun of him. The man said that he had been thinking about this all that week after her escape, and another 2 while she was sick. It seemed to him that he was simply interested in her, but now he was convinced that he loved her. Amelia realized that their conversation had taken a completely wrong direction. She was not happy with what she heard. After all, she definitely didn't need to know this. She asked Kyle to shut up. He couldn't understand why suddenly, and what actually happened. The girl said that his words had a bad effect on her. She thought that she would no longer be able to control herself. The man understood her in his own way. He asked what she wanted, so that he expresses his feelings differently than in words. Killian began to unbutton his shirt. He decided to show his feelings for the girl in this way. Since she didn't want to listen, then let her watch now. Amelia screamed for him to stop. That's not what she meant at all. She thought he was simply crazy. The man was about to take off his pants, but the girl stopped the movement of his hands. She asked him to stop. He stood in front of her with his torso bare, completely at a loss. The girl asked him if he had heard that she liked his naked body, but he answered that this happened at their first meeting. Our heroine admitted to herself that the man was indeed handsome, and the proportions of his body were simply ideal. The muscle definition was impeccable, and on top of that, his charming smile left no chance for anyone. The Duke noticed how the girl was looking at him, and he claimed that she would soon drill a hole in him. He asked if he should take off the rest too. The girl replied that people tend to admire beauty. Killian pulled his shirt around him, embarrassed. He asked what she thought was really handsome. Or maybe at least he looks good. Amelia thought to herself that how could he ask questions with such surprise on his face? An exclamation escaped her involuntarily. She said his face was beautiful, and his body too. That it would be possible to print on banknotes with his face on the front and his body on the back. And it would bring happiness to people to walk around and simply wave such banknotes. The Duke smiled. He liked the girl's original revelation. He told her that it was better to look at him as much as she wanted than to think about money with his image on the bills, and ideally he would prefer to belong entirely to her alone. But the girl backed down. She clarified that she thought his face was beautiful, and there is no need to belong to her entirely. The Duke said that he had completely forgotten, but the girl remembered. That when he confessed to the main character in that novel. He said that no one cared about his existence. Everyone despised him or worshipped him. But in reality, no one needed him in this world. The man believed that he was nothing without his money. The girl already regretted that she had said too much. She saw that she had touched a nerve. She shouted out loud to him that his appearance could feed the whole world. She clarified, "What I wanted to say is that anyone in this world would want to be with him just by looking at him once." She nervously scratched the back of her head from the awkwardness of the situation. The Duke was sad. He argued that she hardly knew how things were in the social life of those close to the Emperor. The girl said it didn't matter. That doesn't make him any less beautiful. Cunning ladies of Balzac's age could only be an exception. And so any girl could melt from one of his smiles. The Duke was completely sad, and the girl blamed herself for bringing him to this point. She sat him in a chair opposite the mirror. She told me to look carefully. And then she asked, how could one refuse such a man? She thought it was just some kind of nonsense to do such a thing. He asked timidly, that she wouldn't refuse him either. The girl again fell for his tricks. She said that he should still print his face on the banknotes, and she claimed that she was no longer so young. And soon she will overcome the age at which they usually get married. The Duke held her hand. He said that it didn't matter to him. What if he liked something? He wanted to get it at any cost. Amelia asked if he had similar desires towards her. The man began to hold her by the back of her head. The girl said, stuttering, that everything was completely wrong. And the man kissed her hand. He said that he really wanted her to be his. His face was serious and tense, and the girl asked not to look at her with such an expression. The Duke stood with one knee on the chair and held the girl's cheek. He recalled what she had just told him herself, that people tend to admire beauty. He looked into her eyes, and she could not tear herself away from his gaze. Their lips met in a passionate kiss. The girl was the first to break away from the pleasure. She asked Kyle to wait, and she said that she had had enough. He asked her to continue, but she thought that she had already lost her head from his words that people admire beauty. She asked herself, how can someone control themselves when such a guy is trying to fool a girl's head? Amelia deliberately made her face as indifferent as possible. She briefly said, "That's enough." She assured that it wasn't that she was interested. Killian agreed with how she would say it. He promised to restrain himself since she didn't want it. He said that he only wanted to express his love for her. The girl again began to succumb to his charm. I asked myself why he was so cute. He was technically trying to convey to her that he loved her, but he didn't use words. Amelia said she wouldn't rush. After all, they had just started dating. Killian asked to tell him when he can say words of love. The girl answered him that in 10 years. He claimed that he would accept this as her desire to live with him for at least 10 years. At the same time, he was so cheerful and sweet. Amelia accepted that the man won and she lost. She understood that she needed to stop arguing with someone so smart and cunning. She said that she was pleased to see him. She expressed gratitude for everything he did for her. Killian asked if she was going to bed already. She answered in the affirmative, adding that it was too late. The Duke took her in his arms and carried her. The servants peered out unnoticed from the door after the happy master. This was already a familiar case. After all, this happened for the third time. The girl herself, out of habit, simply remembered his gesture on some physical level, so her hands automatically locked themselves around his neck. I was surprised that I got used to it so quickly, but something was wrong. She asked Kyle what he was doing and where they were going. He recalled that she wrote to him that supposedly they were not suitable for each other, and he asked how she knew this when they didn't even try a couple of times. The girl did not agree to check compatibility at night. When she asks where he is taking her, the man replied that, of course, to his bedroom. She protested, claiming that she had no intention of sleeping there. At the same time, she struggled and jerked her legs. When the Duke opened his bedroom door, it was interesting to know what. After all, he was tightly holding the girl who was escaping from his arms. She saw a spacious room in a simple style in dark colors. He carefully laid her on the bed. The girl was still tense. The man decisively and quickly began to take off his jacket. He said that he wouldn't let her sleep. He said he missed more than just being able to tell her how he felt. The girl told herself that she would not fall into this trap again. And I decided to look the other way. Amelia examined the interior of the room, and she could understand why the room looked so empty, although it had luxurious furniture. She told herself that it was stupid to worry about someone without knowing their whole story, and she needed to hide this feeling. Killian asked why she was worried about him. The girl pretended that she did not understand what he asked, and she was surprised how he could read her thoughts. He gently touched her hair. He insisted that it is quite normal to worry about someone you care about. He told Amelia that he needed all of her, and he reminded me that he always gets his way. At the same time, he looked pleased and he kissed a lock of her red hair. His face was next to the girl's face. He looked her straight in the eyes. It was a dangerous moment. She didn't understand why he was now waiting for her consent, but it was certainly nice. The girl convinced herself that she shouldn't follow his lead, and she didn't care how much she worried about him and how handsome he was. And I decided to raise him. She knew that if she lost control of the situation now, he would always control their relationship. She asked Kyle to wait. She said that she was embarrassed that she was wearing only a robe. But turning her head to the right, Amelia saw that the Duke had prepared pajamas for him ahead of time. It was as if he was completely sure that she would be there, and she decided to play on his desire. She asked the man if he could turn away while she changed clothes. The man turned away. The girl threw the robe she had taken off in his direction. At that moment, he wanted her more than anything in the world. The girl was lying on his bed in a graceful pose. She said that she was done and that he could turn around. The pajamas fitted her curves, and the ruffle visually enlarged her already rather large breasts. His hand rested next to hers and his fingers intertwined. The girl gasped and he closed his eyes. She asked Kyle to calm down. He lay on top of her and said that he could not be calm when she was next to him. Amelia said that she would like to outline a few rules for their relationship. Otherwise, they risked quickly getting used to each other if they kissed and hugged when they met. The Duke insisted that he did not need any rules, and the girl began to flirt with him and make eyes at him. She said that if he had agreed not to follow her rules, she would have kissed him. But he was the first to kiss her on the lips. All she had time to do was groan. For a long time, he could not tear himself away from her. And then he asked if he could kiss her again. The girl said that now he must ask her permission before any action, and then wait until she counts to 3. But the man firmly answered her, no. The girl tickled his neck. She said she sympathized with him. After all, in this case, they will stop dating. His face became annoyed. The Duke lay down on the bed, burying his face in the blanket. He told Amelia that she was driving him crazy, and the girl understood that her heart might just break now. He grabbed his head and claimed that he did not understand why he needed to count to 3. But she convinced him that in this case, the element of attraction would remain, and this is important in the development of relationships. That thanks to him, he will look forward to what will happen, and this will make the process much more interesting. Killian argued that since interestingness was so important to her, it could be achieved in another way. But the girl hesitated. She stated that she did not want to feel interesting on a regular basis. The man was not happy. He said that this was not to his taste, but he promised to make concessions to her since it was so important to her. Our heroine was glad that she was able to insist on her terms. She thanked Kyle, but he was not at all happy, and the girl believed that she was almost at her goal. He asked why only she would count. Amelia said that if he wants to do something, then she will do the math, and vice versa. Naturally, she never intended to bring the count to 3. Amelia folded her hands in a pleading gesture and smiled sweetly at the man. She asked if he wanted to try it right now. He clarified that he just needed to voice his desire. And Kyle wanted to hug the girl. He said that he wanted to hold her in his arms until she felt like she was about to cry and start calling his name. She prayed to the gods. She reassured me that she would just try things with him and nothing more. And she said that she would count to 3. The girl leaned her hands on the bed, saying 1. Then she lay down, said 2, covered herself with her head and wished good night. Killian was outraged. He called her name. The maid entered the bedroom. Amelia sat down, covering her head with a blanket. The servant asked the master for forgiveness for distracting him, but she said that she thought it necessary to tell him that Miss Claire had just arrived. The door closed behind the servants, and the girl wondered who Claire was. But then she remembered from the book she read that Claire Child was the only one who survived besides Kyle. The girl was surprised that Killian's sister returned home. The man's face was thoughtful. Claire Child was the illegitimate daughter of the former Duke of Child. She was his firstborn, but her existence was kept a complete secret. The girl was so much like her father that he could not refuse her. Kyle himself did not know about his sister until that day came. It was necessary to prove sufficient strength to protect the status and wealth of the Childs, and only the strong were able to survive in this world. From that moment on, the race for the title of heir began. The eldest son died immediately after that announcement, and the reason was an apparent accident. But in fact, they helped him fall down the stairs. Then, on Kyle's coming of age, his second older brother, whom he trusted completely, attacked him with a knife. And after that, the guy locked himself in his room. He was hiding under the blanket, but most of all, his heart was wounded. It was then that an unknown girl appeared. She asked if the gentleman was hungry. She convinced him that he must survive in order to be able to protect the child name in the future, and she promised to help him with this. The guy asked why she decided to support him. She smiled and mysteriously said that she also wanted to protect the Childs. She asked him to simply promise her that he would not forget about her when he became Duke. In return, she promised to do her best. After that night, 2 brothers were killed and another died by accident. Their father also died soon due to illness. And through all those incidents, Kyle was nicknamed Duke Monster. And the first event he attended as Duke was the funeral of his brothers and father. Then that girl admitted that she was his sister on his father's side. She was wearing a dark dress and a black veil. Kyle yelled at her. He asked what she needed from him. The girl stood in front of him, and the wind blew her hair and veil. She replied that after living locked up, she has only one dream: freedom. Her face was serious and sad. She said that she wanted to be free. She had the same brown eyes as Kyle. Amelia recalled the words of Kyle's sister from the book I Want to Be. At the time, Claire was her favorite character in the novel because of her story. The man asked how long she would be absorbed in her thoughts about something extraneous. The girl came out of her reverie and asked her to forgive her, although the man himself was thoughtful. Amelia was sure that they were both thinking about the same person, but unlike her, Kyle felt hatred and anger towards Claire. The girl remembered that he did not abandon his sister when he became a duke, and they maintained good partnerships, and now everything was confusing, and she returned after traveling around the empire. The heroine knew that Kyle's past was complicated, and very sad even for the main character. The man was glad that she finally paid attention to him. The girl decided to make an exception today. She pinned the man to the bed with her finger. She said that she saw a big scar on him last time. She wondered how he got it. Kayla began to unbutton his shirt, but the girl stopped him, claiming that she did not ask to show him now. The man said that the trail was a gift from his older brother for his 18th birthday. He touched his hand to the strip on the lower left side of the abdomen. He claimed that he was sure that he was going to leave much more. But the plan failed. He said that the scar gets inflamed on every birthday, and he considered it an unforgettable gift. The girl sighed involuntarily. Kyle asked her not to make that face. He shared his premonition, that if she is next to him, the scar will not hurt on his next birthday. The man was naked to the waist. He smiled and touched the girl's cheek with his hand. He said that he asked her to stay with him, that he hopes to be with her to heal and feel better. The girl thought that he was wrong. After all, she was not the main character, that she is not the one he will be tied to forever. It was a clear sign of a devastating end. It was time to stop enjoying life and run away. Amelia studied Kyle's schedule for the past 2 weeks, and today he had a big business meeting. The girl stood at the door in a blue dress and with a travel basket in her hand. She resolutely grabbed the handle to get out, and she remembered whether she took everything with her on the road. Today she took water and put on her most comfortable shoes. She opened the doors and told herself that she was completely ready to escape. A knight met her on the threshold. He asked where Miss was going. She had completely forgotten about the Knights of House Child, and it looked like they were assigned to her as bodyguards. The girl claimed that she was going for a walk as always, and she acted amazed that she was being asked such a thing at all. The knight replied that this means they will accompany her as always. She was politely bowed to her by the whole group. The girl noticed to herself that today they were especially pestering. Men in armor told her that there was a dead end, and they suggested another turn, where the path led to the rose garden. The girl asked to be left alone with herself, but the guard replied that this was impossible. She asked the reason, claiming that the estate was safe. She asked if they suspected that she might escape. She showed them the bag, claiming that she specially collected it in case she suddenly gets lost in a vast territory. Amelia assured that she would like to explore places on the estate that she had never gone to before. The knight recognized her idea as excellent, since she was soon to become a duchess. Then she needed to explore her domain. The girl was amazed by what she heard about the plans for her fate. The knight said that it was obvious how the duke treated her as a future wife, that he values her very much, and she will blow their heads off if she even gets scratched in the garden. The girl decided that she needed to get out of here. She threw her basket over the fence, and she began to run away as best she could. The knight shouted after her to come back. She believed that the only way out was to jump over the wall. She decided to trust Amelia's physical fitness. After all, her father taught her, and he was the commander of the knights. The girl somehow miraculously jumped onto the wall. The knights remained below in complete amazement at her physical abilities. They asked Miss to stand still. They warned that it was dangerous, but the girl believed that it was more dangerous to stay on the estate where they were killing. The knights asked her not to jump there. They told me to come back. They promised that they would catch her and that she would not get hurt. But the girl asked if Kyle wouldn't be upset that other men touched her. Men in armor began to pass on the honor of catching the miss to each other, and it turned out that everyone was afraid of the master's wrath. It was a hopeless situation. Amelia made up her mind. This was not an easy step for her, although she had been developing it for a long time. Now that she was on the wall, it seemed to her that the distance to the ground was very great. The knight warned the miss that the wind was getting stronger, and he convincingly asked her to come down. But the girl completely refused to listen to healthy arguments. She stood on the edge of the wall. The wind, as the knight said, was intensifying, and the dress created some windage, and the fragile girl herself was quite light. Another powerful gust of wind simply knocked her over the wall. She flew backwards downward and did not intend to jump to her feet. But luckily for her, caring and strong hands were already preparing to catch her. The girl did not know that she was being watched from the other side of the fence, and I was preparing to feel hellish pain in my back. She grouped herself as best she could and closed her eyes, in anticipation of something bad.